Oh man, I hated this game for the longest time. 20 hours in, chapter 3 just wrapped up, and only then was I feeling some sort of enthusiasm in continuing to play this game. Up until that point, I was so close, like a hair's width away from dropping this game, and maybe someday coming back to it and giving it another chance. So I never finished this game, right? If I hated it this much? Well, obviously not, since I talk about a bunch of spoilers which happened after chapter 3 in my Torna review, which I recommend watching before this video, and just like my Torna one, this video will contain spoilers. So there's your warning. But no, I stayed true to my word saying I was going to do this video, and I pressed on, finishing the game after 82 hours. And you know what I was thinking when watching those credits? Wow, I am so happy I was able to play this. So what the hell happened between me and this game? Originally, when deciding I would do a video on this game, I planned for it to be a standard review, just throwing my 2 cents in on why the game was worth playing or not. Then I realized, after finishing the game, even when I was fully on board with it and could say it was something worth experiencing, I found myself having an easier time describing the bad things than the good. Monolith Soft, this is my first game of yours, new fan here. But what are you guys doing over there? I have so many nitpicks and complaints about this game. Every script I wrote for this video will be like 70% complaints. It was so off-putting, so I gave up on that front, and instead of trying to critique every little thing in this game, I'll go over my experience in playing the game, which still gives a good idea of my feelings on it. This way, I have a nice 50-50 balance of the good and bad, while still getting to discuss some of the game's more important issues, opposed to me wasting 2 minutes talking about why the Blade Gacha system kinda sucks balls. With that out of the way, grab yourself a snack, a drink, sit down, as I tell you a thing or three about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Having finished the game, learned the ins and outs of the combat, I have no problems with it. I call the one in Torna better, as it was more convenient and easier to get a hang of, but here in the main game, where you have far more options on what to play with, and where you're likely going to spend more time on, having a less forgiving combat system is fine, so no complaints on that end. My real issue lies in how the combat system is introduced. In Chapter 2 especially, I'm trying to get a good grip on the gameplay. I heard some sketchy things about it, but I kept a positive mindset to see if the combat would click with me. But no matter what, it felt off, as if I was just pressing buttons. Like, what are these prompts? Do they mean anything? Am I supposed to press the triggers? But nothing happens. Then we have the battleship section to go rescue Nia. I have all these guards swarming me, repeating the same lines over and over and over and over again. I'm trying to kill them one by one, but killing them feels so slow and tedious. I keep dying, having to do this section all over again. I don't get it. Well, whatever. Eventually I'll figure it out. So I keep playing, finish chapter 2, 3, 4, and then in 5, I'm finally forced to look up how it all works. Oh, now I get it. If I time my specials right, I build meter faster. These prompts are for your blade combo, which once you finish you get an orb you can then destroy with a chain attack. I already did the whole spiel last time. Now this is where my own ineptitude ruined some of the game for me. I really should have bothered reading the tutorials better, or just looking it up earlier. But at least 37 hours in, I got how the combat worked. So it was all my fault, right, as to why the combat felt No, it wasn't. For the first 3 chapters or so, the game felt very slow to me, and I placed the blame mostly on me unable to figure out the gameplay. However, I would come to find out that chain attacks, the whole point of the combat system built here, are locked from you until chapter 3. That's right, a major component of the gameplay is unavailable for the first 15 or so hours of this game. It's only until you get the tutorial for it against the first fight with Akos that you're told what chain attacks are and how to do them. The game also gives you a free full party gauge and a free elemental orb, so it's only right after that you're able to actually practice executing one. And of course my dumbass was too confused how to do all this, and so I never learned until the game forced me to in chapter 5. Now part of this makes sense. Chain attacks are where your whole team comes together and begins beating down an opponent. Ignoring chapter 1, up until that point, you pretty much always had an incomplete team. Chapter 2 is mostly just you and one other person at any given time. You crash land with Nia, she gets captured, immediately meet up with Tora, go rescue her, and now you have a party of 3, which is the most you can have out in the overworld at any given time. That means the earliest point where it made sense to introduce chain attacks is right after you rescue Nia, especially so since you soon after fight Morag. Doing it like this would have meant 2 less boss fights that you have to do without your full kit, as you also fight Vandam and his buddies before the fight with Akos. Upon realizing this, and thinking back on my time with this boss fight, it only makes it more painful to think about. It took me 3 tries to beat her, with my first 2 attempts getting her to like 5%, until all of a sudden, she wipes my entire team. It took me a half hour, 10 minutes per attempt, 10 minutes of just slowly whittling down her health, when this could have been easily sped up had I been able to use a chain attack. I understand easing a player into a complicated system such as this, but to take it this far, at the very least, let us be able to use a chain attack if we so happen to discover how, instead of dragging it out for another 5 hours or however long it takes until you get to Akos. I probably wouldn't have discovered it myself regardless, but then I wouldn't be sitting here complaining this much about this design choice. Because of this, I think Xenoblade 2 does a poor job of introducing the player to its convoluted combat, and I do place some blame on it for why I found myself having so much trouble with the game during the beginning. But this is not all, folks. For when the actual game part of your game is boring you to death, you're kind of less invested in what's going on in the story and the game in general. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has enough pacing issues as is. When you then add in the fact that I was bored with the gameplay sections, it made caring about the story feel like more of a desperate attempt to keep me from dropping the game. I say all this because I am indeed about to complain about some issues the story pacing has, but most of my boredom from the first 3 chapters was exasperated by the combat itself, making these early hours feel much worse than they were. When thinking about Xenoblade 2's pacing, I have to keep in mind what kind of game this is. JRPGs are notorious for taking a while to set everything up, and this game is no exception. This is indeed one of those games that takes 20 hours to get good, even if it was 37 hours for me personally, and I can't really knock too much against it for this, because I see what they were going for in these early chapters. Chapter 1 sets up the story, our end goal, and our first batch of characters. Chapter 2 adds Tora to the party, and gives Nia an excuse to stay with Rex. Chapter 3 introduces Mithra, and gives Rex some development through Vandam and his death. Chapter 4 gives Tora some development, an excuse for Morag to join the party. And I'll throw in Chapter 5 in here too, because even though at this point I was far more invested, I would still group it with these first 4 chapters, as once again, it gives Zeke an excuse to join the party, and sets up the Pope as another major player in this story. This game's entire first half of chapters are set up. Set up all these characters and their motivations, and then in Chapter 6, focus all attention on moving the plot, while stakes begin to increase ever more slightly. This made the game feel extremely lopsided, and I can understand why someone would find this game slow to start. I had this problem when I realized our first semblance of a clue on how to get to Elysium only shows up in the second half of Chapter 3. Between Chapter 1's ending and then, we were all sort of just fumbling around, either rescuing Nia, trying to get off Uriah, etc. I was initially much more critical of these parts, but as I mentioned, I calmed down and gave it some more thought as to why I found these parts so boring. Still, it doesn't excuse the fact that only about 20 or so hours in do we get a clue of where to properly go, and then another 20 hours for everything else to be set up properly. Plus, special shout out to the filler in this first half of the game, political talk straight out of the prequels, these fucking thieves that only act to delay the game when we could have easily implemented another way to force bonding with Rock's core crystal, and having to find this titan and then doing a fetch quest for the same guy later on. Because that's exactly what I want to be doing early on. A fetch quest. Fuck you. So how could the pacing here have been fixed? To bring in this dead horse again, just give us everything for the combat as soon as possible. When the story starts out slow, and the combat is also slow and tedious without all our tools, you get a bad combination. Cut out the filler, especially that stupid thief sequence, with these characters we never hear from again. We were right about to board a ship to another titan, but instead it's another hour on Gormod. Come on, man! It's honestly a miracle I beat this game, let alone even like it, as I was in such low spirits early on. There was a beacon of light amongst all this though. In chapter 2, when I considered dropping this game, I told myself, well, I have to do this video because I said so, but I will admit, I like these characters. They're charming in their own goofy ways, and if I stop playing this game, it will feel like I'm betraying them as I want to see how their journey will end. The one saving grace for me was Mr. Dense Anime Protagonist. Cat girl with a Welsh accent thicker than Pyra's, you know. And the furball with a maid fetish.
How may I be of service, master?
Wait a minute! Oh, forget you see that. Tora must change the settings.
These characters, if it weren't for their quirks, I would not be sitting here talking about this game. Being 100% honest, they were a bigger reason I stuck around than my own commitment to my channel. It was this scene specifically, I was like, okay, this is pretty funny. I like these guys. I'll start with Rex. And, well, yeah, his voice acting is the most questionable in terms of quality. His outfit sucks. I really wish they had given him a better outfit to wear outside of him salvaging. And no, his endgame outfit isn't much better either. Plus, he encapsulates my most hated trope in anime, the dense protagonist.
What's the point in living if I have to hide? Thank you for helping me see. I love you, Rex.
What?
Rex!
Nia, I love you too.
Huh?
I love you and all you guys. So, let's do this together.
That's just like you. It's all I could ask for.
But even with all these factors stacked against his favor, I can't hate the guy. He's kind of like Jonathan from JoJo. Yeah, he's kind of boring compared to the rest, but he's a nice guy, good heart, can't hate him. Up next is Nia, who early on acts as a foil to Rex, as they seem to have different outlooks on life, and I predicted they would become much closer as the game went along, and maybe share a more common outlook. But Nia took this to a whole other level, as you just saw. What I really like about Nia though, is that she is a good example of why I think the dub to this game is superior to the original Japanese audio. Typically when a game has Japanese and English audio, I go with English unless it makes sense for it to be in Japanese, like with a certain game I played right before working on this video. Or if the English voice acting sucks balls like with Breath of Wild, yes! Another jab at that game, let's go! So when it came to playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I went with English and I had no complaints. I like the dub, sure it's all very British, but it gave the game a special flair to it that others lack. Some secret, spice, you know? Nia's strong Welsh accent exemplifies this, and I really like the game for going with this odd design choice. When working on my Torna review, I came across a cutscene in Japanese which had Mithra talking, which not only was it the first time hearing the Japanese audio, but when I realized I made the right choice picking English. Mithra in English has this bitchy tone to her voice. It's like resting bitch face, but with your voice. And this fits her character really well. So props to her voice actress on that. But in Japanese, where she is called Hikari instead of Mithra, cause Hikari means light in Japanese, and Mithra is a light attribute blade. The Japanese sure love naming their characters quite literally. Her voice is a bit more generic. This could easily be something I just can't tell, as I don't know Japanese, but it's a reason why I think the English dub is perfectly fine. To bring in Nia again, I decided to look up the Japanese audio when researching this, and Nia's Welsh voice is far more interesting to listen to than her Japanese counterpart, which feels once again a bit too generic for my taste. This isn't meant to be a bash against their seiyus, and some of them are as good as their English versions. It's just going with English gives the game a more unique feel to it than if I had gone with the Japanese audio. Dub versus sub side tangent aside, let me continue with the next character, Tora. Now, Tora is a strange little creature. He used to be my favorite before I was introduced to Zeke, and what's really funny about him is he almost feels like the type of guy whose reason for playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is cause of the waifus. He has this weird maid fetish, which is also hereditary for some reason, because his dad also has a maid robot. His swimsuit outfit you get in the DLC has a t-shirt with hearts around Pyra. There's that one blushy crushy scene which was toned down, apparently for English audiences. He's just an odd character, which is quite hilarious. Looking past his quirks, he develops the first artificial blade, so even from the first scene, it's shown he has some utility, and by the end it's great to see this furball become a hero alongside the rest of our cast. So good on you, Tora, you're great. Morag? I know I called Rex the most boring character, and I don't want to call Morag boring too, because she isn't, but it feels like she has the least amount going on in the story. Unlike the rest, she doesn't get much character development, and I guess Zeke also mostly stays the same, but at least with him, he was introduced as pure comedic relief, only to be revealed he has much more going on with his family, his past, and that he is indeed a competent fighter. Morag is introduced as an antagonist, sure, and then joins the crew, but apart from her scenes with her brother, she doesn't get much more involvement. This could be my memory failing me, but I think I would remember something for a character I genuinely like. When you have a cast of goofy characters, I appreciate having someone much more level-headed and serious than everyone else. A straight man, or straight woman in this case. Plus, I really dig her voice, to be honest.
How about you die in a fire, Zeke?
Then, of course, we have my boy, my man, my husbando, Zeke the Zekeinator. Ignoring his name, he's got an electric blade, a sword that reminds me of the Fume Ultra Greatsword from Dark Souls, an eye patch, which for some reason 2 of my other favorite characters in fiction also have worn eye patches at some point. Some of the funniest scenes in the game. I fucking love this guy. The moment he joined the party, I never swapped out to play as anyone else, with the exception being tough boss fights, where I would change back into Rex. It was the Zeke show, he could have been the main character from that point on for all I care. Finally, Pyra and Mithra. This is something I made some last minute changes to, because I had my script ready about to record, ready to shit on Pyra a bit, but I took a day off, and by pure chance I came across this video and decided to watch it. Upon doing so and reading the comments, I realized something I should have figured out on my own after playing Torna, and that is, Pyra is everything Mithra isn't. Throughout Torna, she's constantly put in her place. Look at Jin, he's a good cook, you're not. All the other blades are reliable, we like them. Mithra, sure, you're the Aegis and all-powerful, but we just sort of tolerate you. Mithra is kinda bitchy, a bad cook, hard to like, and Pyra is the complete opposite of this. This by no means makes Pyro's lack of character development fine, because I feel very confident in saying she's the same character at the end of the game as she was in the beginning. She likes Rex from the start, and most of the conflict in the relationship is from Rex's side. Ignoring Mythra's development from Torna coming over to here, at least she slowly began to accept Rex as her new driver. There's no comparing their character arcs, as Mythra easily wins, but at least now I get maybe why Pyra is the way she is. But no amount of character development will save Mythra from perhaps what may sound to be the most hypocritical thing I've said in my life. The character designs. Oh boy, I really don't like their designs. And I probably wouldn't feel so strongly about it if it weren't for the gratuitous fan service the game does, especially with Pyra. And this is not even me hating Pyra, this is me hating the game. From introduction, boob shot. This scene I mentioned last video, boob shots. Hell, throwing in ass shot too. And to be fair, even one of my favorite scenes of the game has some fan service with Mythra. Same with the hot spring scene, but that serves to foreshadow Nia being part Blade, so I won't hate that scene too much. To be even more fair, Zeke, who I just finished gushing about, could be considered another fan servicey design. He's got muscles, no shirt on, but the game never places any focus on this. But if it did, I would acknowledge at least the game kept it even for the man lovers out there. Look at Pyro's chest. No, really. Doesn't it look super stiff and awkward? Right? Like, I'm not crazy for thinking that, right? This looks super weird. I'm not trying to sound like some SJW or that games can't have sexy characters. Trust me, I don't have a problem with that. But in this game, it just comes off as wrong? Not to mention there's supposed to be these powerful weapons. It makes sense for them to be a bit more covered up, just like their counterpart Malos. Yes, they were designed by different people, but I feel that armor look makes far more sense. Maybe this is why I like Numa's design so much, as it seems more fitting for what she is. I don't know, I played other games with fan service, and yet this is the only one where it has bothered me enough for me to have to mention it. And honestly, like 50% of this are just Pyro's boobs. They look so weird and stiff, it just doesn't look right. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got me to complain about anime girls showing too much skin. You see how weird I find this game to be? But at least now you know why I like these characters so much, and why if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have made it to the juicy parts that are in the second half of this game. Chapter 6 has us going to Tantau, which I would consider the start of the game, fully focused on the main story. Chapter 5 had some of that, but it was also filled with that political stuff I mentioned. Tantau also has my favorite overworld theme, and this is my obligatory mention. Soundtrack is fantastic and the only thing in this game I have zero problems with. From here on out, I felt the game moving at breakneck speed, one thing after the other. Something interesting was happening that had me hooked. Pyra getting kidnapped, which I predicted would happen at some point in the story, Nia revealing her true self, Numa also revealing herself, the land of Moritha, the tragedy of Torna's fate, and the world tree itself. Plus, look at this shit right here. How can I not be interested to finish this game when a whole ass titan turns into a battleship and am no longer able to travel to it? When an area gets locked out from you, you know shit is about to go down. One quick remark I must make about Numa is how I keep seeing people being cautious talking about her, as if she's some major spoiler nobody expected. You're telling me you're playing this anime-ass game with a character that can swap between two forms, and you didn't expect them to have a third, more powerful form? Really? It was hype as fuck seeing it, but this was another one of those things I expected to happen. Now, explaining my thoughts here is a bit more difficult than with the first half, as it was easier to point out what I hated at first than what I liked here. Essentially, it boils down to, look at this cool shit happening, how can I not be invested in this? There weren't a lot of bra moments in the first half of the game, so the second half being so jam-packed was a needed change of pace. If I must name any one thing that is my favorite about the second half, it must be the contrast in areas we explore here compared to the first. Up until chapter 6, every new area was on a Titan, but starting with chapter 7, we got to the Cliffs of Mortha, which are on a dead Titan shore, but then right after that, the Land of Mortha is this weird futuristic ruin of a city under the Cloud Sea. One of my favorite things about video games is getting to explore these completely out of left field areas that you did not expect to see when starting the game. To give an example from one of my favorite games of all time, in Dark Souls, you expect your standard fantasy fare. You got this castle-like environment early in the game, eventually you make it to Blight Town, go into this tree, you're smart, and you hit the wall to discover a path going down, and what the hell is this? You have the one area in the game with background music, you got a Hydra in the back hanging around, and you're just left there standing in awe of what you're looking at. Am I even playing the same game anymore? These are the exact same feelings I had while playing Xenoblade 2. Just what the hell was going to be in that tree? Lo and behold, it's an even more futuristic area than the last. This is one of the few things which caught me off guard in this game. Though, wasn't a major theme in the first game nature versus machinery or something like that? And in X, you have all these mechs flying around. And in here, things like Ophion, the Aegis glowing clothing, they're all pretty futuristic and sci-fi looking, aren't they? Yeah. I was pretty dumb to expect anything inside of the world tree to look like our tree from Dark Souls. I think anyone should have expected to see this coming, especially if they played the series before. Oops. But hey, at least for me, I was so taken by surprise, I just couldn't wait to see how this game would end. And so after so many hours, almost dropping this game, but pushing through to get these characters to Elysium, making them have their happy ending before my eyes, was this barren wasteland. What the heck is going on here? Now, I didn't expect a perfect ending. It would be naive to think making it to Elysium would instantly solve our problems, whether or not it turned out to be a wasteland. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, how the hell is this game going to end? This is another one of those quirky things about this game, which is how even from the start, even all the way back in chapter 2, I was thinking about this exact question. Making it to Elysium seemed too perfect. There had to be some sort of conflict there. And well, fast forward, and here it is. The whole damn place is falling apart. And the only way for this to be resolved is by Rex leaving Numa behind, or really Numa letting everyone else go. Here it is. The final conflict. Rex must learn to let go, a combination of the game's events. Just like how he had to cope with Van Damme's death and move on, Hayes' death, and even his parents' death before the game started. Now he had to accept moving on one last time. Oh, never mind. Numa's fine, and Pyro/Metro are separated now. So much for that whole emotional moment. Just a prank, bro. I love the ending to this game. Gives me good vibes and all. But I will say, I really wish Numa had stayed dead. Immediately bringing them back ruined some of the emotional weight this final cutscene would have had, and I would have given the game major props for killing off such a major character. Regardless, as much as I complain, I still think it's a beautiful ending to what ultimately became a journey that was very much worth experiencing. Well, there you have it. I probably could have worded this video better if I wanted to get into the nitty-gritty of what this game does right and wrong, but especially after doing my Torna video, I wanted to do something that would better reflect my emotions when playing through this. There's really no major point to this video, even if sometimes a game takes 20, 30, or 40 hours to get good. It could very well be worth your time to wait it out. Yeah, it's kinda poor game design, but fuck it, I ultimately had a great time. And don't even get me started on all the DLC bonus content I haven't had a chance to play. This game will keep me invested for many hours to come, If you haven't played this game, go play it, even if I gave away every major spoiler across both reviews. My name is Zekrom Zeke. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talking about my experience with this game. Thank you for watching. Have yourself a good one.
Okay.